The desert morning air was still. Fog and fine dust, undisturbed by windless air, made the early sunlight look weak and smoky. Distant mountains and observation towers seemed to float, suspended above a hazy desert surface. A black pickup was driving fast on the flat landscape, riding smooth through the desert. Its suspensions easily managed any small bumps on the dry lake bed. "I cannot believe she took it," Blake, the driver, exclaimed. He risked a glance at his passengers, waving a hand towards them as if asking for an answer. "We're not gonna make it," Edward, sitting beside him, stated plainly. He was looking ahead, but saw nothing except flat ground that stretched to the horizon. Behind them, Michelle nodded but said nothing. Far away, Rachel was staring at the floating airplane-shaped vehicle. It was painted white, had a vertical stabilizer much like a plane, but no wings. Engines, sized larger than the central fuselage, was attached to either side. Each engine had a turbine shaft and nozzle extending from the serrated exhaust of the turbofan housing. Ground repulsors were elevating it high enough, so that light from the rising sun glanced off its underbelly, and highlighted the resolve in Rachel's eyes. Knowing who the caller would be, she still answered her phone when it rang. "What are you doing?" Blake asked. "I was always gonna be the driver," Rachel replied. "We can't go now." She is being careless, Blake thought. There were rumors that higher-ups were dissatisfied with their cautious approach, and the project will be handed to a more aggressive team. "You picked this time and place, this is our one shot," she answered doubtlessly. They had predicted another pulsating gravitational anomaly, a kilometer from her position, and its ETA was fast approaching. This was supposed to be the first manned excursion into the anomaly, and it got cancelled. "You could die," Blake said jokingly. Rachel was standing behind the experimental vehicle. Laminated titanium skin and carbon fiber frame was light and strong. But would it be enough to protect her? "You built this, it'll work," she assured him. Blake sped to the designated staging area, and got off the pickup truck as it stopped. Michelle and Edward immediately followed. There would have been equipment and personnel here had the operation proceeded. They watched the vehicle speeding through the desert. Repulsors kept it level a foot above the ground. Blake observed through a pair of binoculars. "Fucking love you, Rachel," Blake said, more on admiration than other reason. He focused on the improvised equipment mounted on the conical nose. Components of the gravity generator were contained in a cluster of cylindrical and rectangular-shaped canisters, just ahead of the cockpit. A pole extended from the cluster, and at its tip, rectangular distortion field emitters were attached. The emitters started to coruscate, as energy was fed to it from powerful turbo generators built into the huge engines. An enlarging globe of shimmer originating from the emitters quickly encompassed the vehicle. Computers adjusted speed and travel height so it will be centrally located once in contact with, and while the gravitational anomaly was expanding. The vehicle and anomaly suddenly disappeared during its contraction phase. There was a loud resounding slap when surrounding air collided with itself in a rush to fill vacated space. The sound ran across flat desert and reverberated among distant hills. Blake slowly lowered the binoculars from his face, which showed a mixture of awe and concern. He looked at his companions. Elation and relief clearly showed on their faces. A successful entry was difficult to achieve. Most of their previous attempts with probes were failures. Parts were sheared off from probes that were not completely inside an anomaly before contraction, and it cycled between expansion and contraction at a rapid rate. Memory modules were made tough and some survived, but data was somehow missing from memory cores. They drove quickly to where Rachel vanished and looked around for anything new that they can examine. All they saw was a trail of black dust that splayed from the vanishing point, a typical phenomena with their previous attempts. Edward bent down and rubbed some dust between his fingers. Its texture felt familiar. They have studied this before, nothing but ordinary carbon particles. How and why it materialized was still under study though. It worked. She jumped. Michelle said tensely. Rachel, she thought, was gone too long. Previously, probes that enter an anomaly reappeared immediately a few meters from the jump point. Okay, Rachel, now you come back. Blake, with arms stiff at his sides, was bobbing with impatience as he looked straight ahead, in the direction Rachel would have traveled if she hadn't jumped. He knelt down to inspect the black dust pattern. Its angle of spread was definitely wider, and there was at least twice the quantity. Where do you think she is? Edward asked. When do you think she is? Blake corrected, smiling knowingly. He was about to tell his theory, but the ground began to tremble. They had to concentrate on maintaining their balance while the earth shook. When it subsided, Blake noticed pebbles rising slowly from the dried, cracked, and crusty surface of the desert, and realized what was about to happen. What's going on, guys? Michelle asked apprehensively. She felt the air vibrating on her skin, and heard a shrill building in intensity near where they were standing. Standing quickly, Blake warned his friends loudly. Get away from the track. They all moved back just in time to avoid getting hit by the experimental vehicle that suddenly appeared and rushed by them, accompanied by a thudding sound. It left behind a trail of dust as it continued on a straight course towards the mountains. We did it. It worked. The three of them were jumping ecstatically, doing high fives and laughing wildly. Partly because of having been released from the tension of waiting, and a realization that they have just opened a new door for discovery, and they would be first to see what lay beyond that door. Suddenly another vehicle blasted above them. It materialized with a sharper and louder thudding sound and moving at great speed in pursuit of their experimental vehicle. The distance between the two quickly diminished. The dark-colored pursuer had no identifiable engine, but it clearly generated great thrust. Its triangular frame had multiple wings with pointed tips that curved downwards, giving it the appearance of a carnivorous bird about to attack its prey. A volley of luminous, tightly packed particles spewed from the pursuer. It missed the fleeing white craft, and made geysers of dust whenever particles come in contact with desert soil. Blake watched helplessly as the attacker continued firing, following close to Rachel's vehicle. Had they started something terribly wrong? My God, what will happen to Rachel? Where did the attacker come from? He thought, confused and fearful. They designed the experimental vehicle with one purpose only, to enter an anomaly, so they built it with minimal means for maneuvering. The outcome of the chase was for certain. When the vehicle got hit, it vaporized instantly. The luminous particles was so effective that jet fuel did not have time to burn and form a flame. It just turned into a rapidly expanding gas that slammed on the ground with great force that a large plume of thick dust was ejected to the air. Its mission accomplished, the attacker immediately performed a steep climb and promptly vanished in a flash of ionized air. Blake can only call out Rachel's name. Indecision and confusion kept him from doing any definitive action. "We have to get out of here." Michelle had barely finished speaking when she suddenly vanished with a short and sharp whooshing sound. Edward was looking at the still rising dust plume, and he too vanished as he turned towards Michelle. Blake was calling both their names now, raising his hands in an unconscious act of surrender. His dazed mind thought that running away from this would be a safe act. He turned and began to run, but almost collided with a human-like entity who stood just behind him. It was holding a weapon that was aimed at him. He fell down while trying to back away from it. With butt on the ground, Blake looked up at the entity, its weapon still pointed at him. It was in full dark armor, with design accents similar to the vehicle that attacked Rachel. He paled as less blood flowed to his head. This made his brain think of only one thing: to run away, flee from death that was sure to come. But he just sat there, waiting, as the figure stared at him through glowing diagonal eye slits. Then it lowered the weapon and raised its other arm with a hand that was clenched. It opened the hand to let an object fall in front of Blake. Instinctively he looked down at the object and was about to raise his head at the entity, when it too suddenly vanished with another whooshing sound and flash of light. Surprised, Blake looked around trying to find the entity, expecting another to appear. When satisfied that nothing else was happening, he examined the object on the ground. It looked like a lump of blood-red glass that was chipped off from a bigger piece, and he saw several glowing crystals embedded in its translucent material. The irregular appearance gave no suggestion as to its purpose. With a sigh he picked up the object. Blake involuntarily shut his eyes as a vision popped up in his mind. He was in a place that seemed similar to the desert where he was sitting, but the sun was dim and there were two tall leaning spires as tall as skyscrapers far away. The vision disappeared when he dropped the object. As his eyes opened he wondered at what he saw. What was it? Was it real? Did my mind just saw it, or was I in it? He checked his surroundings looking for clues if he was still at the place where Rachel and the others vanished. The sun was still rising from the mountains when they went after her, but now it was almost overhead. His eyes fell on the pickup, and that confirmed it: he was still where he was. On the same desert, on his butt, and feeling quite scared. The door of the pickup was still open. It seemed to be inviting him to get in and drive away from this nightmare. He was so tempted to get up and walk towards it, but as he looked down at the piece of glass, he realized that he had been given a key, and it showed him a tantalizing glimpse of what lay behind the door that it was meant to open. Okay. He sighed, and took a deep breath as he gathered his strength. Time to go. He uttered softly and grabbed the red object with a resolute hand. Blake closed his eyes when it seems his eyeballs tried to turn and look at his brain. He heard a ringing inside his ears as the air around him vibrated keenly, and he felt temporarily weightless. He opened both eyes as the world around him steadied. He grinned, amazed at the object in his hand, but he noticed that the crystals inside the glass had lost its glow. He's actually here, he thought, but it might be a one-way trip. His eyes swept through the surroundings as he stood up, and almost felt disappointment. He had expected to see more than what was shown. He was thinking that this was the future, but it looked very similar to the past he just left. The desert, the far mountains, even breathing this air felt unchanged. The sun had just set, which was why he thought it was dim, but there were more of those tall spires this time, arranged in a gigantic circle, and leaning towards the middle. He began to notice better now. The jump must have disrupted his cognition. His mouth hung open when he realized there were now 2 moons hanging over the horizon, but one of it looked artificial. The moon's light was getting brighter now, and he noticed something that he missed earlier. It was a glass box, and what was enclosed within brought confusion to his face. It was their experimental vehicle, and he had witnessed its destruction. But its cockpit was open, which could mean that Rachel, he whispered, might still be somewhere here or somewhen. The end.